Hello internet. Guess this is a thing now. I'm just gonna eat chocolate in my videos. Welcome to another writing video. This is fun. Today I want to talk about the hardest part of writing a book, and that's getting started. It's how to first translate your ideas from in here to on here. This is my laptop. So why is getting started the hardest part? There are a lot of different ways to go about it. What's the best way to do things? Why is this the best way to do things? And are you lying to me? You can go online and research this question and everyone's gonna have a different answer. But I'm gonna talk about the merits and not so merits, two of the biggest ones. Whether or not you start a story with a plot-centric focus or whether you start a story with a character-centric focus. It's been very clear based on previous videos kind of where I fall on that. And so I'm kind of going to just talk about why. What makes character more important than plot? Nothing. Plot is very important. What makes starting with character more beneficial? Now I have two men I'd like to introduce you to, not in real life. Chrétien de Troyes and Shakespeare. Chrétien de Troyes, if you've never heard of that French gibberish, is a French romance writer in the late 12th century. He's also incredibly important to the world of writing because he was the founder of how we think of the modern narrative. Introduced quests. He had things he wanted his characters to do and things he wanted them to learn along the way. But you can substitute pretty much any of the knights in those stories and it wouldn't change anything. Everybody is super generic. All the knights are valiant, noble, and the most courageous knights we've ever seen in our lives, even if the last knight was also described in the exact same way. All the women are radiant, beautiful, golden haired, and the sweetest lady you'll ever meet unless they're brunette, in which case they're evil, even if the lost damsel, as they're called, is described that way. Every character is interchangeable for every other character, and it definitely makes the stories a bit boring. Take Shakespeare, on the other hand. Shakespeare was a master of character building, a foundational text for creative writing students, which I'm unfortunately not, but I have a friend who is, who recommended this book to me. The Art of Playwriting by Robert McKee says, picture Romeo and Juliet. Now take out Romeo and put in Hamlet. Is it the same story? Of course not, because Romeo and Hamlet are entirely different people. In Chrétien, you could substitute Hamlet for Romeo and nothing would change, but in Shakespeare, you can't. And that's the difference between, having character in mind as you move the story and having plot in mind. It makes a difference. When you're starting your story, if it's the plot, then you need to work the characters around your plot. I highly recommend starting with the characters first. As you're writing, you'll find if you develop your character separate from your plot, you end up with characters who make decisions they shouldn't be making because they just need to fit plot. You have complete character 180s because you need someone to make that decision and you didn't write in a character who would do that. Now you could go back and write in a character, but if you're an overwriter like me, that is a terrible idea. Develop both at the same time, but use your characters as a way to develop the plot. Start with your premise. Start with a basic outline of the beginning, middle, and end, but use your characters to formulate the details. This way your plot and your characters, they develop simultaneously and you don't need to worry about trying to marry your characters with a plot you've designed because maybe you love your characters but you also love this plot and you're just not sure how it's gonna work. I bring you this advice because I have done both. I have developed plot first stories and I am working on a character centric story. I feel a lot more comfortable about the decisions that characters make and the ideas that I have with my character based story than I ever did with my plot based one. There were so many rewrites that had to go into my plot-based story to make things more realistic because the main character, or any human being, just wouldn't react that way. People were making stupid decisions because I needed the plot to go in a certain direction, and in that particular case I kind of realized, no, I don't need the plot to go in that direction and it might be more interesting if it took it a different direction instead. But had I not, I would have had to rewrite the main character to essentially be the biggest asshole in the world just to allow something so terrible like to happen. And it didn't work. The characters were one-dimensional, the story just kind of went and had no real purpose, and character development was non-existent. When it comes to writing your story, here's how I recommend you start. Take your premise, write it down, brainstorm just notes. Oh, wouldn't it be cool if this happened? Wouldn't it be cool if this happened? Wouldn't it be cool if this happened? Then come up with a bare bones plot. When I think bare bones plot, I think, when you're writing an essay, like Harry Potter, you have to touch each book, but you can kind of talk about each book in a way you want to. That's how I think about it. So you know that these beats have to be met, but you get to choose how they go about that, and you get to do that by developing realistic feeling characters, and as you develop those characters, elements of the plot, smaller elements, will begin to develop too. Ooh, the relationship between these two characters is really interesting. Wouldn't it be kind of interesting to explore that direction? So you know that there needs to be a betrayal at some point. Maybe originally character A was going to betray the main character, but now that you've got this interesting vibe going on with character B, maybe it would be more meaningful if character B did the betraying. So you're not thinking up the entire plot before you start, and you kind of get to develop both at once. It's like like killing two birds with one stone. And then you get to go into the fun part, the outlining, which I have a video for if you want it. So that's why I think it's more beneficial to start with characters. Now that's not to say that starting with plot isn't beneficial. There are some stories that need to start with plot and don't need to start with characters. A lot of things based off of other things, or things with a MacGuffin. MacGuffin needs to be found somehow. That's very plot centric. Sometimes things need to be plot centric. Or even if you come up with this idea and have the entire plot laid out ahead of time, like, your premise is the plot. First of all, I'm jealous of you. I haven't. So, but second, if the premise is the plot, then your job now is to come up with characters who would realistically do those things. Start with the decisions that they need to make and work backwards from there rather than building the character from the ground up. That's completely counterintuitive to how we're taught to develop characters, but otherwise you'll have characters making decisions that don't make sense for how they've been developed up to that point. So it's up to you which version you use, but I recommend starting with characters purely because you get both developed at the same time, and that's just easier for me. Of course, I do things in a very complicated way that takes, 2 years just to develop your characters anyway. That's just my own masochism. It has nothing to do with how you start your characters. So when it comes to starting your book, that's my recommendation. Come up with a premise and then work on your characters and see how developing your characters helps shape an interesting plot that you might not have thought about before. So that's how you start writing a book. I do have a video on the different types of outlines, but if you're curious about any more videos on further steps in the writing process, let me know and I'll make more. But I figured since starting is the hardest, that's where I would start. Thank you so much for watching this video. Getting into these writing series has been a big part of getting through a difficult couple of weeks in my existence. So this has been therapy for me. So I want to thank you for indulging me, and I hope you liked it. If you did, please hit the like button and the subscribe button and talk to me. Let's be friends. I haven't said that for a while. Hit me up on social media. I've put all the links in the description box below. I've also put links to my outline video just in case anyone's kind of curious, and also my MBTI video in case anyone's curious about how I develop my characters. But other than that, thank you so much for watching. Me again. Just as a reminder, I'm posting videos on Thursdays. Also, I have started posting on Vocal, which you can check out this week's article and my page in the description for, sometimes there'll be blog posts, sometimes they'll correspond videos, so you'll find notes, thoughts, and more in-depth or personal takes on what I'm thinking. So go ahead and check that out. It's separate from my Tumblr, so it's a little bit more personal than writing focused. I decided that writing's my dream job, and the only way to become a better writer is to keep writing. So any way you can support me and my writing, whether it be on Vocal or on here, you're supporting me eventually be able to do this for a living, so thank you for helping me out with that. As a reminder, I'm now posting new videos on Thursdays. See you next week. Bye.